July 30th, 1975. A warm summer afternoon in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. A man waits impatiently in the parking lot of the Machu's Red Fox restaurant. He checks his watch, he paces. This man is no ordinary diner stood up for a lunch meeting. He is James Riddle Hoffa, one of the most powerful and feared men in 20th century America. And after this afternoon, he will never be seen again. For decades, the name Jimmy Hoffa was synonymous with the American labor movement. To his supporters, he was a working-class hero, a tireless champion who fought for the rights and wages of truck drivers and warehouse workers across the nation. To his enemies, he was a corrupt tyrant, a man who wielded the immense power of the Teamsters Union like a personal weapon, forging dark alliances with the very forces he claimed to oppose. His story is a classic American saga of power, ambition, and a mysterious, final chapter that remains stubbornly unsolved. Hoffa's journey began in the 1930s during the brutal labor wars of the Great Depression. He was young, tough, and a natural leader. He started as an organizer on the loading docks of Detroit, where he quickly learned that power wasn't given. It was taken. Through sheer force of will, charisma, and a willingness to get his hands dirty. Hoffa rose through the ranks of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. He understood the drivers, their struggles, and their desire for a better life. He spoke their language, and they followed him with unwavering loyalty. By 1957, Jimmy Hoffa was the president of the Teamsters, the largest and most powerful union in the country. He sat at the helm of an organization that could bring the entire nation to a standstill. Trucks stopped, goods didn't move, and the economy held its breath. Under his leadership, the Teamsters secured landmark contracts, including the first national freight agreement, which dramatically improved wages, benefits, and working conditions for hundreds of thousands of members. His influence was immense. Politicians sought his endorsement. Businessmen feared his wrath. But with great power came great temptation and dangerous friendships. To build his empire, Hoffa allegedly made deals with the devil. He was widely believed to have used the union's massive pension fund as a private bank for the mob, financing Las Vegas casinos and other underworld ventures. This alliance gave him street muscle and protection, but it also put him in the crosshairs of law enforcement. The federal government, led by the fiercely determined Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, saw Hoffa as a threat to the nation. The Kennedy brothers launched an obsessive crusade to bring him down, leading 2 years of intense legal battles, investigations, and a very public war of words. The government's efforts finally paid off. In 1964, Hoffa was convicted of jury tampering and later of fraud related to the pension fund. Despite his appeals, he was sent to federal prison in 1967, sentenced to 13 years. From his cell, he tried to maintain control over the union, but his grip was slipping. His hand-picked successor, Frank Fitzsimmons, grew comfortable in the presidential seat. Fitzsimmons was more pliable, more accommodating to the mob's interests, and less confrontational with the government. The old guard was being replaced. In 1971, President Richard Nixon commuted Hoffa's sentence on one condition. He was barred from any union activity until 1980. For a man like Jimmy Hoffa, this was a fate worse than prison. Being shut out of the Teamsters, the union he had built, was a kind of death. But Hoffa was a fighter. He immediately began challenging the restriction in court, convinced he could win back his throne. He was planning a comeback, making noise, and reminding old friends and old enemies that he wasn't going away. This defiant campaign to reclaim power is what likely sealed his fate. Which brings us back to that parking lot on July 30th, 1975. Hoffa told his family he was heading to the Machu's Red Fox for a 2:30 meeting. He expected to see two men, Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone, a notorious Detroit Mafia captain, and Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, a Teamsters official from New Jersey with deep mob ties. The meeting was supposedly a peace summit, an attempt to clear the air and gain their support for his comeback. but Giacalone and Provenzano later insisted they were nowhere near the restaurant that day. At around 3:30, a frustrated Hoffa called his wife from a payphone. "Where the hell is Giacalone?" he asked. He told her he'd wait a little longer. That was the last time anyone from his family ever heard from him. When he didn't return home for dinner, they knew something was terribly wrong. Jimmy Hoffa was many things, but he was never late without a call. The next morning, his unlocked car was found, still sitting in the restaurant's parking lot. But of the man himself, there was no trace. An immense investigation was launched, the biggest since the Lindbergh kidnapping. The FBI swarmed Detroit, interviewing hundreds of witnesses, informants, and mob figures. The case was a labyrinth of half-truths, underworld codes of silence, and conflicting stories. The primary theory was that the mob, fearing Hoffa's return to power would disrupt their lucrative access to the Teamsters pension fund, decided to eliminate him. He knew too much, he was too loud, and he was a problem they needed to solve permanently. Over the years, dozens of theories have emerged, each more chilling than the last. Was he killed near the restaurant and his body disposed of immediately? One popular rumor claimed he was driven to a mob-owned incinerator. Another, more gruesome theory suggested his body was mixed into the concrete foundation of a construction project, perhaps even Giant Stadium in New Jersey. A claim that was later investigated and found to be baseless. Other informants have claimed he was buried under a driveway in a suburban Detroit home or on a horse farm miles away. Each tip led to a new search, a new excavation, a new glimmer of hope, but every dig turned up nothing. The key suspects like Giacalone and Provenzano were followed, wiretapped, and questioned, but they never broke their silence. The evidence was always circumstantial. No murder weapon was ever found. No crime scene was ever identified. And most importantly, no body was ever recovered. Without a body, a murder conviction is nearly impossible. One by one, the men who likely held the answers to the mystery grew old and died, taking their secrets with them to the grave. The case grew colder with each passing year, transforming from an active investigation into a modern American legend. Decades later, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. It's a story that speaks to a turbulent era when organized labor, big government, and the criminal underworld were locked in a complex and often violent dance. Hoffa's legacy is just as complicated as his disappearance. Was he a hero of the working man or a corrupt boss who sold out his union? The truth is, he was probably both. But what is certain is that he built an empire, and in the end, that same empire likely consumed him. His story serves as a haunting reminder that in the ruthless pursuit of power, some secrets are buried so deep they may never see the light of day. Somewhere out there, the truth about what happened on that summer afternoon is still waiting to be found.